So, hello everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Today on the channel we have Robert Durden of the Political Fight Club YouTube channel. Highly recommend you check it out. I really love his content. He brings humor and satire and wit to a lot of these subjects that can be really heavy. And I stumbled across his content pretty recently thanks to Independent Left News, and I've been loving his content ever since. And you're also on Rockfin, correct?
That's right. Yep. Exclusively recently because I've been banned from YouTube for a week. I just got back on today.
Okay. Do you want to maybe talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Being banned from YouTube, because it seems like there is just an insane amount of censorship happening right now, both on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, even in some regards. Maybe you want to chat about that a little bit.
Sure. I'll first tell you about kind of what happened to me, and then there's some other people that are also banned right now. We'll talk about them second. I got banned. I'm a chiropractor. I went to school for 9 years, and I've been in practice for 5 until I quit during COVID about a year ago. That's how I started doing my YouTube channel. And I got banned for putting up an episode talking about bodily autonomy. And basically, this episode came out back when there was all that discussion about Roe v. Wade in the news, because Texas had just passed that kind of draconian forced pregnancy law, where they deputize a lot of their populace to turn in women that might be trying to get an abortion past 6 weeks. And as a doctor, of course, I had to do an episode on it because most women don't know they're pregnant beyond 6 weeks. So it's basically forced pregnancy. So what I was talking about in that episode was, do we have the right to our bodies in this country? And as someone who, when I have to adjust people, I have to touch them. You're trained like crazy on bodily autonomy in chiropractic school. So I made the episode about how both sides of the partisan aisle are kind of hypocritical. There are the lefties who are like, and lefties, I say lefties, the neoliberals. They talk about how a woman should have a right to their body when it comes to abortion, but it's a lot of the neoliberals right now who are trying to force a vaccine mandate on people, which in my opinion, that's against your bodily autonomy. So they're hypocritical there. And then the converse of that is that the righties are like, well, I want to tell that woman who's 7 weeks pregnant what to do with her body, but I'll be damned if you inject me with anything. That's against my autonomy. So I basically was pointing out that both sides of the political aisle are hypocritical, at least in some aspects when it comes to autonomy. So I tried to make the argument that it's like, I'm 100% for bodily autonomy as a doctor, but also that's my training, but also my moral stance on it. So my issue is that I want people to be educated by the vaccines, but if you're hesitant, it's your body and your choice. So my thing was like, if there's going to be people inevitably who are questioning the vaccines in this country, let's prepare for them to not want it, to reject it, because that's their right, and prepare, other backups like using ivermectin to treat them in hospitals and what have you. And that's the episode that I got taken down for, talking about people's right to their own body. And so what did I do? I'm kind of a smart ass. I made another video that same exact day with the title, YouTube banned me for talking about bodily autonomy. So here's my second video on bodily autonomy. And all I did in that video is just, I cut out talking about ivermectin. And I wanted to see if they would get me again. And they got me again 45 minutes into it. I didn't even get 40 views on the video, and they banned me entirely for a week. So that's what happened to me, is I got banned for basically essentially the same video reshot. And it's a doctor talking about bodily autonomy, which makes it all the more ridiculous when you hear it like that. Now, also, I want to plug the people that are also banned with me. Franco from Frank Analysis, he just got banned for a week for doing exactly the same thing, talking about the vaccines and bringing a ton of receipts, and they got him for that. Then we've got Propaganda Live, which I was just alerted to his banishment yesterday. He does not know why he's been banned, but I would love for you guys to go sub to him. I really like that.
Write that down. Yeah,
he's cool, man. I didn't even know about him, but he does a lot of he plays games like PS4 games and then talks shit like we do, kind of just like riffs and makes fun of the establishment. And he does great content. And they banned him for an episode that made no sense whatsoever. It was called Getting Over It, Mentally and Physically. So I don't know what he said. He still has not been alerted to why he got banned. The Convo Couch was banned recently. They just got back up. And then I don't know if you know Vanessa Beeley, one of the activists / journalists who originally called out the OPCW cover up and how it looked like the Syria gas attacks were a false flag. She got banned yesterday for her episode about Taiwan.
Jesus Christ.
So it tells you kind of, in a way, when you look at what these people were talking about when they got banned and who's getting banned in particular, you start to see a pattern, man. There's a narrative that's very, very nefarious, if I might. And anybody that goes against that narrative and brings receipts is getting banished to the Isle of Misfit Truth Tellers right now. So, but I'm back up on YouTube as of today. I just uploaded a video, or it should be uploading right this very second, actually.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you're back from banishment, but I guess that's why it's important to have those backup options, because, you know, these Silicon Valley tech corporations are just so ready and willing to, you know, silence these voices that go against the, you know, narrative, whether it's, you know, about vaccine mandates or people, you know, maybe people's reasons for not wanting to get them, or people calling out, you know, the US empire, capitalism, etc. That's why it's so problematic when there's people on the left that support people being, you know, censored, even like Trump, frankly. I mean, he's, you know, been off Twitter for a while. I mean, they're going to use it against, you know, anybody that calls out this type of bullshit. And I think, you know, also the push in the United States, I think, to get everybody vaccinated has nothing to do with looking out for people's health. It's just to get people back to work, to keep this capitalist system going. And, you know, I think there's, you know, a lot of good reasons why people are, you know, hesitant when the US government says that they're looking out for the well-being. Okay, like, we're in a pandemic. You didn't give us universal health care. You gave us, you know, very limited survival checks. You didn't cancel student loan debt. You didn't do any of these things. So why should we trust you now when you're saying that you want us to get vaccinated for our own best interest, right?
Exactly. And the science is showing us that we can't vaccinate our way out. And you make a great point. A lot of it is about trying to get people vaccinated so that they will go back to work.
Yep.
But there's many other reasons too. The vaccinations, the American vaccines stand to make the top 2 or 3 corporations billions of dollars per quarter. So it doesn't pay for them to push something like ivermectin, which is unpatented and unpatentable because it came out over 40 years ago. Merck can no longer make money off of ivermectin. So they demonize that because there's no profit motive in pushing something that's effective and cheap. There is, however, profit motive in pushing the vaccines because it makes a lot of Joe Biden's buddies on his cocktail circuit a ton of money. So yeah, it's capitalism at its worst. And it's, Franco and I were talking about this when he platformed me the other day. We were talking about how it basically doesn't pay to end COVID. And in disaster capitalism, man, you never let a catastrophe like COVID go to waste. And that's what we're seeing right now. Disaster capitalism at its worst. And COVID is a catastrophe that keeps on giving because it doesn't end like a hurricane does, or an earthquake or a wildfire. It just keeps mutating. And so therefore there's this infinite profit motive that's being dangled in front of the corporatists. And therefore it doesn't pay to end COVID. It doesn't pay to promote anything that might help people that isn't profitable, like ivermectin.
Literally keeps mutating with these different variants. Yeah, well said there. Then I also think, you know, during this whole pandemic, there hasn't been really any talk of what actual steps people could take to become like more healthy, whether it's growing your own food, getting outside, exercising, fresh air, making sure everybody has healthcare, mental health care, all of these different things. And it just really shows that it's just, you know, about getting people back to work so the capitalist class can keep, you know, breaking in these record profits while, you know, the billionaire class is increased their wealth by several $100 billion while, you know, tens of millions of people have been out of work during this time are still out of work. But the one positive thing I do see about this whole thing is these renewed kind of labor unrest and all these strikes happening across the country and even different parts of the world, whether it's South Africa or South Korea. And it's like people are fed up. I've watched some of your videos, just telling people to not go back to work, quit their jobs. And I think it's, frankly, one of the few ways that we could actually get some concessions from the capitalist class.
I 100% agree, and you're right. It's international now. It's global. So we're fighting against capitalism in sort of a weird. It's it's global, and I love that. South Korea, you're right. I think they're building up to a general strike. What they're doing is they're starting and they're like building momentum. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I wanted to do. And one of the things I've been saying on my show is like, dude, there's so many people that are angry with the way that things are going right now, both Democrat and Republican.
Yep.
Let's just all take some time off. Let's have a big old transnational party. I called it Striketoberfest,
Nice.
where I was like, let's build some camaraderie and basically give a big FU to the establishment, but also like do it in a celebratory, defiant kind of way. And I love to see this. This makes me happy. But again, it's still a drop in the bucket until we can get a lot more than 100,000 people striking. So I want to build momentum for next year as best we can and make it something that we can all do together. I don't know if you've seen, like, you've probably seen some of my Rockfin episodes. I even talked about some like party games we can play while we're on Striketoberfest. Some of them are pretty grotesque, having to do with like stealing Joe Manchin's yacht or other things. It's a lot of fun. But it makes me very happy to see, because like you said, things are so bad right now that it's really like it's starting to manifest with both sides of the aisle, and people are starting to realize that it's not red versus blue, it's the haves versus the have-nots.
100%.
So what I'm trying to do is like unify the have-nots, and I don't really see things in a red and blue way anymore. When I was first getting into politics, I didn't know how badly Americans were propagandized and couldn't see through the propaganda. I was like, man, Republicans suck. But as I've learned more about how Americans are propagandized and how we are deliberately turned against one another, the more I realize it's really just the elites that have an enormous mainstream media and propaganda apparatus turning everybody against one another. If we could all just unite as the poor people and stop working and have a good time and take care of each other with mutual aid, we could have whatever we want. You guys want a $30 minimum wage? Got it. You guys want, and the things I've always said are like, let's make it easy on Joe Biden. These things can be done via executive order. You forgive student loan debt. You pardon all of the whistleblowers and drop all charges against Snowden and Assange and Daniel Hale, all of them. You can legalize marijuana.
Yep.
You can also give everybody Medicare for all via Section 1881 Alpha of the Social Security Act via executive order, because we have a pandemic on our hands and he can do so. And then there's a handful of other things that you can do. I said student loan debt. But basically, make it easy on them. We could go on a week-long general strike and have both our government and the CEOs by the balls if we did that. So I'm hoping that we can add to this awesome general strike we're in right now, or the numerous unions that are striking right now, and double it or quintuple it for next year.
Robert, I thought we just needed to vote blue no matter who. Then once, the orange man got out of the office, then, everything would be back to normal. What happened to that?
Yeah, right. Don't those people look like ridiculous nowadays? They're like, it's going to be like FDR. And then you look at the new infrastructure bill and like everything that was even remotely FDR like is stripped out of it. There's no $15 minimum wage. There's nothing that's going to really create a whole lot of jobs, because Biden isn't interested in really upgrading our infrastructure. He's mostly just interested in making a whole bunch of private companies a lot of money as they shittily upgrade our roads and bridges. So if he really, was like FDR, we'd be looking at the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal cost $16 trillion. It looks like he's going to be 1/10 of that.
Yeah, if that, right, it keeps getting, well, it was supposed to be 3.5 trillion, which was only 350 billion each year, which is, again, just a very small drop in the bucket to what we need. And it's getting whittled down even further and further. Maybe 1.5, 1.7, if that. So one of your videos, they're cutting out community college. The child tax credit will only be a year, and just whittling it down even more and more. But I mean, at least, we have Biden in there. There's a D next to his name. Like, that's somehow better, even though he's almost doing the exact same thing that Trump did. The only difference is because the Democrats in power, the liberals, the Democrats, the squad, the fraud squad are, running cover for them because there's a D next to their name, right?
Exactly. It's very, very sad. And now Biden has the lowest approval rating of his presidency and one of the lowest of all time at this point in his presidency. And he's basically despised by both sides of the aisle. The only people that think he's doing a good job are the neoliberal elites.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. In the infrastructure bill, the only two things that are still on the table are possibly universal pre-K and an extension of the child tax credit for another year, but possibly at a reduced amount. And the only reason they're doing that, by the way, is because they don't want to get wiped out in the midterms, and that's going to happen anyway. But they need one thing to hold or to hang their hat on that people are filling in their bank accounts. And I imagine that's what they did, is they just extend the child tax credit just far enough to get through the midterms, and then it cancels right afterwards in attempt to have put up some sort of fight in the midterms. And it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. Right now, I was joking with somebody on Twitter earlier. Basically, if Trump were to run on, I'll give you the $600 that Joe Biden owes you, and I won't have the IRS flag it, because that's the new thing the Democrats are trying to sneak into this bill, is that they flag anything that any transaction over $600 in your bank account. Mm-hmm. All Trump has to run on now is, I'll give you the $600 that Biden owes you, and we will not institute this IRS tracking of your money, and he will win on that alone. So it's so pathetic, man. The Democrats are setting themselves up for some sort of it's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, it's going to be worse than a bloodbath. They're going to lose the Senate and the House, more than likely, because of this.
And then of course it'll get blamed on, people who didn't support, the Democrats or Biden. Again, it'll be people, on the left. We just got to do this. This is the most important election in a lifetime. So if we don't do it, you're such a bad person. But then, once Biden got into office, all those people, went back to brunch, went back to sleep. Well, again, the hypocrisy, if you're going to call out somebody for doing fucked up shit, if it's Republican, call out the Democrats for doing the same thing. I mean, look at what Biden's doing at the border with the mass deportations, the people getting whipped, by the ICE or the Border Patrol agents on horseback, using the same Title 41 or Title 42 thing from the CDC to mass expel these people before they can even have their, cases heard in an asylum court. No survival checks, as you pointed out, doing that very strange math equation. Well, Trump gave you that, so I only need to give you that, and so now it's actually 2,000, and we're good. We're good there. I mean, at least have some moral consistency. But liberals, Democratic defenders, people like TYT, David Pakman, David Dole, people who you always call out on your channel, they're not able to do that. They're just stands for the Democratic Party, the Democratic machine, because that's their bread and butter, and they don't want to lose their access or prestige. So it's always very, very one-sided. But I think more and more people are waking up to that fact, right?
I 100% agree. And with the people that are on the left, let's not forget, we're not mad about things that are arbitrary. A lot of the things that we're insisting Biden do are things that he promised.
Yes.
So it's turning out that he promised community college. He promised some amount of student loan forgiveness across the board. He hasn't done any of that stuff. He promised a public option. That's off the board. So again, a lot of the things that we're going after him for are things that were the bare minimum. And as far as I know, he also has been promising, even recently, or hinting that we're going to get dental and hearing included. Even that's off the board. So no lowering of Medicare age, no expansion of Medicare, just tweaks around the edges for the ACA. How is that in any way unreasonable for the left to call him out on things that he was making promises about, which, by the way, those were quarter measures on quarter measures.
Yes.
So like we're asking for crumbs and they're being like, "Well, you're asking for too much." And I don't like that whatsoever. And to your point, the people that are defending this dumpster fire that is the Biden presidency are exposing themselves, right? We can tell a lot about somebody by how they will look at the Biden presidency. If you're not yelling about the Biden presidency the same way you were yelling about the Trump presidency, then you are not a serious person, because they're really on paper about the same. There are some things that Trump did a little better. There's some things that Biden does a little bit better. But let's remember what you were talking about with deportations. Biden has deported way more people than Trump ever did by a
Yeah.
lot. And the border crisis is probably worse. The only thing that's better about the border crisis now than before is that Biden isn't separating kids from their parents. But
Mhm.
other than that, as far as numbers go,
Mhm.
things are much worse. So, when you spend 4 years like TYT did, and like a lot of these other aforementioned channels do, demonizing Republicans and making them seem like they're idiots, and making it all about, well, the right wing is the problem. When Biden comes into office and does exactly what the right wing oligarchs would otherwise get done if they were in office, you look like a fool when you can't stop talking about how Biden's better than Trump. And this has exposed not just TYT, but I remember one of my first power rankings episodes ever on my channel. I ranked Kyle Kalinske #1. And since then, my two biggest by far videos have been roasts of Kyle Kalinske.
Oh,
And
nice.
because I had to turn on him because it was so obvious when Biden took office that his content changed,
Okay.
which means he's not serious. He's all about now the same thing as like Sam Cedar and the Ring of Fire and David Dole. It's all about, oh, it's the Republicans' fault. And the squad is still doing their best, but they don't have enough power to actually do anything, which we all know is bogus, because the Republicans don't have any power in Congress nor the White House. And the squad obviously isn't using their leverage.
Yeah.
So they don't look like serious people, and it has really stunted, for instance, Kalinsky's channel. He's stuck. He's not going to go. This is as good as it's going to get for him, and he's only going to tank after this. After the midterms come along, guys, remember, last point, they're going to change their rhetoric. When they lose the House and the Senate, probably both, maybe just one of them. It only takes one of them. What they will do is then immediately turn to, well, it's the Republicans' fault. They're the ones blocking everything. And it makes a convenient scapegoat that they're going to use. So it's almost like they're trying to lose. And I think they're going to do it, and it'll give them a convenient scapegoat for losing for the second 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency. And then we likely end up with Trump 2024 pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even if Trump didn't promise to get rid of that IRS thing or to give them the extra money that the Biden admin and Congress didn't allot, I think just Biden's inaction and his lack of willingness to do even the very meager things like you pointed out that he campaigned on. And I was listening to this video is about a different field, but I think the point stands here. Like anybody that's an actual threat to the political establishment, they're not going to let them get to those, positions of power, whether it's, a congressional seat, like how when, before AOC got elected, she said she'd be very comfortable just being a one-term candidate. And now she's, mama bearing it up with Nancy Pelosi, the ridiculous political stunt at the, Met Gala while people were getting brutalized by the police outside of it. You have her, crying on the, floor of the House when she voted present to fund the Israeli Iron Dome. I mean, yeah, these people just aren't like either serious by design. They're just, corrupted by that influence and prestige that comes along with it, or they were never really serious to begin with. Maybe it's a combination of that, but I think people really need to lose their rose-colored glasses when it comes to holding up these politicians as, figures that we need to, revere in some way. It's like, no, you need to like call them out on their bullshit and speak truth to power. I mean, for God's sakes, like it shouldn't be that complicated of a thing, I think at least.
Yeah, it's a weird thing we do in America where we're kind of celebritizing our politicians in a weird way. And that comes along with a ultra capitalist techie society naturally. But it's being played into by the elites because they know that if they celebritize AOC, they can get a whole bunch of stands to basically defend her for no other reason other than that she looked pretty at the Met Gala and wore a, marginally, not even marginally, like disruptive dress. And it's weird because it nerfs the squad. It's capitalism getting its infiltrating activism in a weird
Yes.
way,
Yes.
and it will always do that. And it doesn't matter which squad member it is. Everybody has their weak point, and it seems to me that AOC's weak point was that she likes the idea of being kind of like a princess, and it was the fame, and that she can go to these hoi polloi gala events and stuff like that. She wants that. So that's the pressure point that they got with her, with all these other people like Cori Bush. I'm not sure what it was. I'm sure money had something to do with it, but they've all been co-opted, and capitalism will find that pressure point, which is why I'm absolutely about third parties and getting rid of the duopoly.
Yes.
But even I have to admit, man, with the like capitalistic apparatus that the elites have right now with the mainstream media and the immense amount of influence and money they have, even eventually they might be able to co-opt third parties, which is why we have to get them up and going as best we can, and do the best we can to pick people to run that literally hate the establishment, uncorruptible people that literally want to basically go in there and just destroy the Democrats and the Republicans. Otherwise, there's no hope for electoral politics. But if you're still on the squad
Yeah.
train, you're not a serious person, or you're
Yeah.
just not results driven. And Kyle Kalinske, he seems to me, having watched him for like 6 years, a very results driven dude. But then when the squad gets in there, and the people that he basically predicated his entire channel off of their success,
Justice
i.e. the
Democrat, right?
squad. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He has a hard time being honest about how ineffectual and cowardly, and in my opinion, how corrupt all of them are. The best he ever says is like, yeah, they're ineffectual, or they might be cowards. They're too afraid to stand up for what they believe in. I disagree. They've all become careerists,
Yep.
and that is corrupt. So they're all corrupt. They're not just cowardly. It might have been they were cowardly to begin with, and then it turned into corruption. But every single one of them now has allowed their pressure point to be pushed, and they're not standing up. So they're all corrupt, which means I don't give them your money. I
Yep.
donated to all those people,
Yes.
and I'm never giving another cent to anybody who runs Democrat ever. And
Yeah.
I hope everyone else can do the same.
Agreed. I mean, if you're not willing to go in there and burn shit down for the betterment of the working class, then you're an enemy of the working class and these people time and time again. I can't think of, a Democratic politician that is actually on the side of the, working people. And I think more and more people are, recognizing that. One of the things I appreciated about Trump, as abhorrent as he was in a lot of ways, is that he, took that mentality to politics when he was running in 2016 Republican primary. Like, he was willing to say or do anything to get, elected. And we need more people like that in office, but who are doing it for the betterment of the working class. And I don't really see anybody out there right now, at least, who is elected on a national level that really has that. They've all been corrupted, as you say. And yeah, it definitely seems like, Kyle Kalinske, I think his, analysis is decent sometimes, but I also think, he's not a socialist. I think he identifies as a democratic socialist, and they're all about, reforming the system. Like, you're talking about getting people elected, changing the system from within. Like, no, that's not how it works, dude. You got to be pretty fucking delusional to think that at that point. What happens is you get in, system corrupts you, or either, they're not going to let you get in if you're actually a real, challenge to power. That's why they sabotage, Bernie Sanders' campaign, two times in a row, because Bernie, I think, actually would have followed through with, at least canceling student loan debt, legalizing marijuana, that type of thing. They saw him as a threat, and they torpedoed his shit 2 times in a row.
Yeah, and I think the days of Justice Democrats winning it are over. I don't think they got kind of lucky, like where they pulled a fast one on the establishment who was more or less asleep, and they got lucky beating Joe Crowley and a lot of these other, juggernauts. And as to yeah, I that's why I can't donate to them. I'm not insane, Like Kalinsky wants you to keep doing the same thing over and over
Yes,
and expecting different results, right? That's the definition of insanity. So like
100%.
it weirds me out when like, Nina Turner loses, and then what happens? Mike Figueredo and Tim Black immediately go out, literally crying that it wasn't that she ran a shit campaign and cozied up to the establishment and had a whole bunch of consultants that were neoliberal shit zippers on her payroll and took a lot of her donations and put them into weird stuff that wasn't going to work. It wasn't that she ran a terrible campaign. It was that we didn't donate enough money to her. It wasn't. So you got to donate more, you peons. And that drives me absolutely crazy because it's like, dude, how much more do you want the poor people to give every little thing that they have into a playbook that we already know their defense is set up to defeat? Like, we would never do that. It makes no sense. So it drives me crazy. And I actually did go after Tim Black pretty fucking hard for that, by the way.
Yeah.
I destroyed him on my show. But it drives me crazy. It's like, how much more poor people money do you need? She had $5 million donated and doubled up her competitor and then got killed. She had a 32-point lead. 32 points. So how did this happen? Because she abandoned the base that would have been so happy to canvas for her and pump her up online and help her with social media and make her go viral with every speech that she threw. She abandoned all of her rhetoric and therefore the left base. And when the left base abandoned her, she lost a double-digit lead immediately. And I don't think that this new thing that they do, the establishment to defeat progressive candidates, where they all coalesce at the last second and put a ton of dark money into the race in the last week to demonize their opponents, it works. It beat Nina. It also is beating other people, but we have not adapted to that play. And Kyle Kalinske is just like, no. I want you just to basically keep doing the same thing. Next time we'll just give more money and hope for the best. And that's not enough for me. As a strategist, that makes no sense. And I'm not willing to bang my head against a wall for the next decade while these Justice Democrats go in there or don't get in there. And I waste a ton of money on useless candidates.
Yeah, I think definitely, trying to organize political power outside the electoral process is super powerful. Like we were talking about earlier, like the building up to, a general strike movement, trying to organize for a third party, whether it's the People's Party or, Party for Socialism and Liberation, whatever it is. No substantive change is going to come from the, corporate duopoly that is the Republican and Democratic class. They're completely bought and paid for by, moneyed interests. They're always ready and willing to sell out the working class for their donors. And we've seen, unfortunately, with Biden, not surprisingly, U.S., foreign policy, U.S. imperialism remains unchecked. If anything, it's accelerated, in some ways. So I just think the people that are these Democratic defenders, no matter what, they're just really showing how, unserious they are as people, because the same disastrous consequences for the working class, under Biden and internationally are still, happening. Same things that happened under Trump. But they're just really exposing how unserious they are. And I'm still somehow on Bernie's like text list. And I got a text from him a couple days ago.
I got it too.
Okay. Yeah.
About AOC, they're doing the live stream. Those motherfuckers.
Progressive leaders for discussion on the reconciliation bill that will transform our country.
Lose my number, assholes.
Transform our country. 1.5 trillion. That shit's gonna transform. Like what?
No, it's less than 1/10 of what Bernie was proposing with the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, guys, this is as far as climate change goes and the Green New Deal, it's a sprint. This isn't a marathon. We have like 8 years to fix this stuff. And basically, if you see that sprint as like we need our football team to score a touchdown and we're on our own, basically in our own red zone. We need to get 90 yards. And Joe Biden wants to go to the 5-yard line and call that a victory. It's like, no, you're not even getting within field goal distance. And what they do on the left, or as far as neoliberals go, is they go, oh, Joe Biden got us to the 5-yard line, but because Trump was only going to get us to the 3-yard line, we win. It's like, no, we have to score a fucking touchdown or otherwise the earth is going to catch on fire. And you're doing less than 1/10 of what we need minimum to help that not happen. So it's crazy. And what will happen my prediction is, and I've been pretty spot on with this shit lately, is like what'll happen is they'll get like a 1.8 trillion, 1.9 trillion dollar bill that does nothing. Because by the way, all the climate provisions have already been scrapped.
Yep.
In this current bill, all of them gone. So what will happen is that Biden will get us to his own 4 or 5 yard line and then do a victory lap like we just scored some points. That's what will happen. They'll do a massive PR campaign, Bernie and AOC Inc. included, talking about how he's FDR like, when hoping that we'll conveniently forget that Bernie was proposing 16 trillion over a decade, and we're going to get 1.6 trillion ish. So it's like, it's ridiculous. And that's exactly what they're going to do here, because they're not, the neoliberals want essentially the same thing as the Republicans do. And if that is, don't fuck with the corporations, don't up the tax rates, don't do the infrastructure unless you're going to privatize it, stuff like that. They're just putting on this facade that they're actually fighting right now. And the one fighter that we allegedly had, Bernie Sanders, has given up but he was starting at 6 trillion, and now we're meeting in the middle at 1.8 trillion. Joe Manchin got exactly what he wanted and what his donors paid him to get, and Bernie got nothing that his donors wanted him to get, the small dollar donors. And that's American politics in a microcosm.
Bernie, completely sold out when he dropped out and endorsed Biden right away without getting any type of policy.
That was a huge swing and a miss.
Any policy concessions, at least. I mean, Biden probably would have lied. Yeah, I'll do this and this and that, but at least try to hold his fucking feet to the fire a little bit and get something. But I mean, I keep coming back to the point about Bernie that Hedges has made, Chris Hedges, and about how he's just a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. And, you know, he kind of claims to be independent, but when push comes to shove, he's Democratic Party loyalist, and that all that hurts is the entire working class of the, you know, United States. And that's why definitely stop donating to these people. They're not serious. They are able to, you know, tap into that activist like rhetoric. We feel your pain. We're going to do these photo ops on the Capitol steps to, you know, stop you from getting evicted. Even though they didn't do anything in Congress, they knew that the Supreme Court was going to overturn that, as you pointed out in one of your videos. That happened. What have they done to extend that? Nothing. Unemployment benefits expired. That hasn't been extended because, as Biden said, we want to get people back to work. We're not going to have any more, you know, shutdowns or stay-at-home orders. No more money is going to come out. Trump's out, so everything's going to magically get better, even though we're going to just, the policy continuation is almost, you know, 100% the same.
Yep. Biden is more or less Trump with a better PR team. That's what I've always said. Like he continues and often perpetuates and makes worse a lot of things. Like he got out of Afghanistan, right? That's the one thing that they can say right now that he did. Yeah. But they upped the military budget $39 billion a year. So all that means is that he's going to start a couple of shadow wars in, you know, Syria or Somalia. They've already started sanctioning Cambodia. Like it just, and what they'll do now is they'll act like they're less imperialist because they got out of Afghanistan, and start all these wars that aren't really widely televised, and act like they've cut down on the military, which they have not. So in a way, it's much worse. Yeah. And also remember, Biden is also somewhat hawkish with North Korea, where Trump was very buddy-buddy with North Korea. So I was actually, that was like, that's, you know,
that's one good thing it did.
Check in the Trump column. So like I said, they're both horrible. So my whole thing has been like, don't vote for either of these two assholes. We've got a giant douche and a turd sandwich, as South Park said. Don't vote for either of them. What we really need to do is vote for whatever third party has the most momentum behind it.
Yeah.
Try to build coalitions behind that. Use unions to help boost a third party. And my thing has always been like, if we can just get a voting block big enough to get the Green Party or Movement for a People's Party on the ballots nationwide and get them on the debate stage, we can take these assholes down. Now, that would require running some people that have some name value, and I've talked about that in other episodes, maybe even celebrities, because they seem to have a weird leg up in American politics. You know, but then the play has to be, don't run to win, run spoiler. Let's get on the debate stages and get the funding that we need to get one third party on the ballot across the nation, and then use that as a vanguard party to crush the duopoly.
Yeah.
That's what I've always advocated for. I think we can do it, but it's going to take us like really uniting as like a labor class, really understanding that we need to, as the proletariat, come together and take down the elites. If that's going to happen, I don't know. It seems likelier now as things are getting worse and worse than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you elect Biden, it nerfs a lot of momentum that a movement like that has, because like you said, people are back to brunch. You don't see the same Black Lives Matter style protests going on nowadays that you did under Trump, which is in a way why I've always said it's almost better to have Trump in there, because he's so obviously cartoonishly villainous that it actually is a motivating factor for people to hit the streets. Whereas Biden goes in there and he kind of like sneaks fascism in through the back door, and you don't know he's actually doing it. And he has this awesome big mainstream media apparatus that defends him. So he's getting a lot of the same stuff done that a Republican would, but it's so much under the radar. So people are not, there's not as much civil unrest as there should be. So in a way, I kind of look forward to the 2024 election, because I think Trump's going to win. And I think this country is more or less going to burn to the ground. But as it burns to the ground, I think a lot of us are going to realize, oh shit, we need to hit the streets for real. So in a way, it's almost like silver lining of a guy that's trying to ram fascism down your throat. At least you get to look him in the eye. At least you know where it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, point well taken too, what you mentioned earlier about, U.S. imperialism and Biden somewhat getting out of Afghanistan, even though, the drone strikes, the CIA shit, that's going to, remain there. It's just pivoting, more anti-China stuff, pivoting towards them. We saw that ridiculous deal to give, Australia those nuclear-powered submarines. Like, we don't need a fucking new Cold War with China. China's not the enemy. The capitalist class is the enemy. I mean, just look at how China has handled the pandemic compared to the United States. They don't have any vaccine mandates. They've had, last time I checked, it was like less than 5,000 people have died from the pandemic. Last time I checked, United States was over like 722,000. But no, China, we gotta blame China. They're the bad people. Like, I mean, Jesus Christ. And
expect a lot of that in the future. That's the next thing.
Yep.
War with China.
Just like that's why Trump won. It was Russia, not because they propped up Hillary Clinton, this hugely disastrous, horrible candidate that basically nobody liked. She lost to a freaking reality TV show host. It's not because of all her baggage and that she was so horrible. It's because Russia gate, all of that bullshit. It's always,
and they'll do that again. If Biden loses, that's exactly what the Democrats will do in 2024, is they'll say that it was Russian interference that caused Biden to lose. Not his horrible presidency, not his favorability rating, which is around 40% right now, not the fact that he went back on every campaign promise, not the fact that he didn't give you the $600 that he promised you. Raphael Warnock also, who's running for Senate, has to run for Senate again in Georgia, right? He promised with a literal like check that said $2,000 on it. He was like holding it up in that ad. Like it literally said $2,000 on it. My man's going to get fucking killed in his upcoming election, and he'll deserve it because Biden hasn't done anything. And even the shit promises that he was making, he's come through on less than, one or two of them tops getting out of Afghanistan, even though that's partial credit. And then, you could make the argument, if he does get this bill through and there is in fact a universal pre-K in there, that's the other thing. But again, like these are, drops in the bucket. They don't really help people. And remember, everything that's in this bill, if it were to go through in this current form, the universal pre-K and the child tax credit, that does zero for anybody who doesn't have kids, which is a humongous amount of young people that are a voting block that he needs to do well in. So even that doesn't make sense from a strategic standpoint. He's not trying. It's almost like he's not trying to win. So it's crazy to me. You make excellent points. It's really, like I said earlier, I really wish that if we're going to have somebody that's a fascist in there, at least put someone in there that's inflammatory enough to get people to hit the streets, because then we can really like pull that Band-Aid off quickly, start really some true civil unrest. and
Mhm.
then we can put some real pressure on our politicians. But you're not going to get that with another Joe Biden presidency or a Kamala Harris presidency or a, God forbid, like Pete Buttigieg or whoever they have lined up as the heir apparent to Joe Biden if he dies or if he's so brain dead that he can't run in 2024. But I don't think that's going to happen, man. I honestly, I think it's safe to say that if nothing changes, if this bill passes the way that it's going to pass and they stonewall or they don't allow anything to pass the second 2 years of his presidency, it's a slam dunk for Trump in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, like you're talking about earlier, Biden is Trump, but with just liberal messaging and liberal propaganda, but again, carrying out the same exact
Yep.
things. And like, yeah,
Different
it's
PR.
almost like he doesn't want to win, or like he's definitely governing that way because again, like think about how much support he would get from the left and from the right, from Democrats and Republicans if he canceled student loan debt, if he passed Medicare for all through that executive action through the Social Security Act that you mentioned earlier, legalized marijuana, pardon all those, drone Daniel Hill, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, etc. Like those policies are hugely popular, both sides of the aisle, but he's not doing any of those. And yeah, that's definitely why,
Yeah, it would be a slam dunk, and he doesn't need Congress. He doesn't need Congress, and that is indicative of what the Democratic Party is. They create scapegoats, they do nothing, and repeat.
yeah.
And that's what it is. They don't want to help you. They
Mhm.
are only rhetorically on the side of
Yes.
the people, but on
Yes.
paper, they're really not. If they really cared about that stuff, they could do exactly what you just said via executive order. Doesn't need to go through Congress. It can be done with the swipe of a pen. And indeed, I think it was the Debt Collective actually wrote up an executive order for Joe Biden to sign and sent it to
Mhm.
him and had a whole bunch of people retweet it at him that said, this is how you forgive student loan debt via the Higher Education Act of 1965, Section 432A. All you have to do is sign Joe Biden and all student loan debt is forgiven.
Yeah.
Has he signed it? No. And that by itself, if he just did one of those things that you mentioned,
Yes.
even pardoning the whistleblowers would probably help him win in immense fashion because the left would be like, okay, well, at least he's for censorship or he's against censorship, right?
Mhm.
But no, he's not doing any of those things. And all it takes is, even with his Parkinson's laden hand, it only takes him 15 seconds to sign that signature, and he's not doing it. Tells you everything you need to know.
Well, and that was something else he campaigned on, right? Was canceling some student loan debt. I think maybe 10,000 of it or something like
Yep.
that. But
And then
that
he alluded also that he might do more as much as what Elizabeth Warren was talking about, which is he might
50,000.
go to 50,000. Right. He didn't say it directly, but I think he alluded towards more than 10,000. Has he done that? No. He's forgiven less than 1%, 0.4% of student loan debt total. And the only people he's really forgiven it for are people that were defrauded by
Yep.
fake universities.
Yeah.
Mostly. There's some other things too, like people that have disabilities that keep them homebound, so they can't get a job nowadays. He forgave them as well, but I mean, it's less than 0.5%.
And canceling student loan debt, that's another one of those universal policies, if enacted, would disproportionately benefit the most vulnerable, marginalized, particularly people of color who have more student loan debt than other
That's
groups,
exactly right.
right?
That's 100% right. Brianna Joy Gray talked about this, about how it would, I think it's like within the first 10 years of you being in a career as a white person versus a black person in the same job, that white person will have 12 to 1 the amount of savings that the black person will. And if you were to forgive student loan debt, like eliminate it, that ratio changes to like 4
Yep.
to 1.
Yep.
So it's like it would solve an enormous amount of the racial disparity in our economy just by doing it. But of course, Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. He worked
Yeah.
with segregationists when it
Jim
comes
Crow
to
Joe.
right. Kamala Harris, his current VP, poll axed him in debate number 2 last time for talking about how he worked with segregationists to keep her own bus segregated or to keep, her busing system segregated. And she was right. That landed because he is absolutely a fucking racist. And that's one of the reasons that he doesn't want to forgive student loan debt, is because he knows it disproportionately affects black and brown people. Same reason why he wants to keep the prison industrial complex and the militarized police force so well funded, that disproportionately affects black and brown people. And Jim Crow Joe, he doesn't like him some black and brown people. The only black and brown person he likes is Kamala Harris, and everybody hates her. And she's not really a black and brown person. She's more like one of those MIB aliens, where there's an alien living inside her skull that's like attempting to be a black person, but really doesn't know how to do it well. That's Kamala Harris. So it's not surprising at all that the writer of the crime bill and basically the architect of our current prison industrial complex in this country is not for forgiving student loan debt. It hurts way too many black people for him to do that.
Yeah, and he, just the crime bill. He literally, like you're talking about, bragged about working with segregationists. I think Strom Thurmond in particular. Just a really horrible dude, like all around. Doesn't really seem to have any redeeming qualities, but they, pumped him up with all these, drugs, whatever, to get him through these debates. And now he's the leader of our country. And I also think it's so interesting that, the United States is considered the land of the free, but we have the world's largest prison population,
it's like over 2 million people. And a quarter of that is nonviolent drug offenses that could be immediately expunged if he, again, used executive order to remove marijuana as a Schedule I drug and then expunge the records of people that are in jail or prison due to a violation. But he's not going to do that either. Again, that's predominantly black and brown people that get hurt by that non-signing of an executive order, right? And it doesn't surprise me, whatsoever. That's exactly who Joe Biden is. And it makes me think about how we need to make sure that black and brown people understand this when it comes next election cycle, because he did very poorly with Latinos, but he did very well with black people.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can educate black people next time they go around, because a lot of those people will only vote for the Democrat just simply because on social issues they appear to be more accepting and less racist. I want you guys to remember, there's nobody more racist than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I just talked about what Joe Biden did. Remember Kamala Harris, when she was California DA, she was insisting that they keep their prison industrial labor force intact because their economy wouldn't do so well without that slave labor that they had from their prison complex. So it's like, dude, you're literally a colored person advocating for indentured servitude. Let's remember exactly who these people are. Just because Kamala tends to look like a black person does not mean that she advocates for the rights of black people. So I hope that we can remember that when it comes to the next election. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, on paper, are vehemently anti-black and brown people.
Yeah, it's kind of the issue with, liberal identity politics. Just because you get somebody in a high place that checks off these different backgrounds, whether they're a person of color or LGBTQ or, etc., doesn't mean they're actually going to be looking out for those interests of those groups once in power. That's why, woke or diverse imperialism, no, you're still serving the U.S. empire and doing really horrible things to black and brown people, overseas. And very similar to, Kamala Harris. She's definitely not looking out for the most vulnerable and marginalized people. I think even as that DA, she wanted to actually jail parents if their kids were truant to school. And the federal government had to come in at one point because the California prison system was so overcrowded and they were, holding these people in just these very overcrowded conditions. The federal government had to tell her, I think this was when she was attorney general, right, that they had to let some of these people out. And she was actively fighting against that. She wasn't for legalizing weed for a long time. She was supporting Medicare for all for a little bit. Then once she became Biden's VP, all that shit obviously, went completely out the window. That's why it's just so the Democratic Party is the death of social movements. And I think more and more people are, recognizing that, need to organize, political power outside of the corporate duopoly, because no party is going to look out for the interest of the, working class. And as the material conditions continue to get worse and worse, and they, more and more people are seeing that neither party is actually doing anything that frankly benefits them at all, right?
Yep. And it's particularly bad in this country right now for Black and brown people. I would implore those people, don't vote for the duopoly. Find a third party. That's where you're going to get the best platform that actually helps you. And the evidence of, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in the past just absolutely not caring about the rights or the humanity of any type of Black and brown people, that is just something we need to highlight, because I don't think a lot of people know it, but it's pretty obvious. And an argument can be made, and I think it's a solid argument, that Joe Biden has done far more legislative damage to Black and brown people than Trump ever could have. And not ever could have, but it did in his 4 years. Let's just put it that way. I'm not absolving Trump. He's obviously also, doesn't like Black and brown people. But I mean, to say that Trump is more racist than Biden, not so much. At best, it's a tie. And legislatively, no one's done more to hurt those marginalized groups than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And yet they still collected a lot of the, the minority vote. I hope they don't next time. Vote Green Party or whatever party that's outside the duopoly that, fancies you.
Yeah, same. I mean, if we're able to get enough momentum where they're on the ballot, one of these third parties is on the ballot in all 50 states. And I think that could potentially even just, pressure the Democratic Party to go to the left a little bit instead of continuing to creep to the right as they've been doing for decades at this point. And you just get enough people to support that third party movement, then the Democrats like, well, if we actually want to retain our power and prestige, we're going to have to give, the working class that we hate and despise so much, at least a little bit of something, or we're going to be out of a job, right?
Yeah, and that's what Nader tried to do, and that's what the play I would love to happen. Honestly, you don't have to run to win. The idea, if running third party or running spoiler, is you pick a couple of people, and I floated the idea of like running Cornel West or Jesse Ventura, people that already have a massive like name value because they have a huge leg up. And remember, we only need 5%. Right? 5% of those national polls to get on the debate stage for a little bit. Now, if the For the People Act passes, the amount of money you need to bring in per state quintuples. So there's a poison pill inside the For the People Act. If that passes before the next election, it makes it almost impossible to run third party. So that is the caveat. But if it turns out that they don't pass the For the People Act, it's still possible for us to run a couple of big names. And the point should be run spoiler. And then you pull over 10 million or 15 million voters that are going, listen, we will never vote for the Democratic Party ever in the history, in the future, unless you give us A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we're going to keep doing the Nader play over and over again to spoil you. You will never win another presidency without our consent. And you hold that hostage. And then maybe you get a couple of concessions that say, no, you're going to run with these things on the platform and you're absolutely going to do these things. Otherwise, we're going to run spoiler until the end of time. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would love. That's what the Vanguard Party is about for Leninism. I'm a Leninist. It's about developing a third party that has enough clout to either go in there and destroy the two-party duopoly, but at bare minimum, have enough of a leverage piece, a bargaining chip that is a massive amount of people that will refuse to vote for the Democratic Party unless they adopt these things. And the things we've mentioned earlier would be my things, because there's no excuse as to why they can't be done. They don't have to go through Congress. Yep. We'll worry about other things after that. If we can do something like that, let's say we ran, like I said, you could run Ventura and Cornel West at once. Just on name value alone, there's a good chance they're going to hit that 5% threshold. They're going to, people are going to see that are tired of the duopoly, these two people who they already know talking about things that would really materially improve their lives, like a $20 minimum wage, like Medicare for all. And then you never know, man, that Nader pulled quite a bit of people to his cause. He didn't, get exactly what he wanted done, but he almost did. And if we could do something like that, then we could pull the Democratic Party back our way. But I don't see it going through electoral politics any other way than that. And if we do that and it doesn't work, then we're looking at like a total like burn it down revolution.
Yeah, which I mean, it might come to that at some point as the material conditions just keep getting worse and worse. And yeah, the both, political parties just completely incapable of enacting any type of change that benefits the working class, because that defeats the purpose of why they're there, right? To uphold capitalism and imperialism, as Lenin said, which is the highest stage of capitalism. And yeah, that's why both parties fight so hard to keep third parties off the debate stage, make it more difficult for them to get on ballots, because if people are actually presented with ideas that would benefit them, then the luster of the Democrats and Republicans would wear off very quickly, because like, oh, this Green Party, this Party for Socialism and Liberation, wow, the shit they're saying actually makes sense. They want to give us healthcare, they want to give us tuition-free college, they want to get rid of the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex, like et cetera, et cetera. They want to make sure everybody has housing, a living wage. Wow, that sounds really good. And all they're promising is talking shit at each other while doing nothing for us. Like, that's why, obviously, why they fight so hard. That third party, that fourth party, that fifth party option isn't out there, right?
Yeah, it's a censorship thing. They know that they can't combat the ideas of a third party on their merits. All that the Republicans and the Democrats do on the debate stage is they go, "Well, you suck for these reasons," and they never tell you what they're going to do for you. It's all about smearing the other person. And once they have a party come along that's talking about what they're actually going to do for you, they can't compete with that. So that's exactly right. That's exactly why they want to keep the Green Party and the Libertarian Party off the ballots. And like I said, man, that's why HR 1, which is the For the People Act, is it's good in a lot of ways, but that poison pill basically euthanizes any future chances of a third party being able to make it. It makes it almost impossible for them to get on the ballot, which is why I'm actually against it, unless that gets removed. If that passes, I don't think the third party thing is going to be viable ever. Even just getting on the ballots, I don't think is going to be viable. And what the Americans have been shown, and leftists in particular lately, is that, listen, the Democratic Party is never going to let you have a president. They're never going to let you have Bernie Sanders. They're going to cheat you out of it.
Yeah.
So you're never going to have a Democrat run for office and win. We're going to cheat you. The next step then for us as leftist voters is, okay, let's try third party. But if they prove to us that the same thing that happened with the Democratic Party is also going to happen with the third party, which is like literally we're going to cheat you everywhere along the way, and it is a fool's errand, and they prove that to us, then we have no choice but to do a revolution. And that's where we are right now. We're at an impasse where the leftists in this country are going, listen, our last bastion is trying to run third party and trying to just get on the ballots. But if you guys, the establishment, and particularly the DNC and the establishment Democrats who have all of Congress and the presidency right now, make it impossible for us to also run third party, and you've also proven it impossible to run through the Democratic Party, look out, because you take everything from people, you no longer have any power over them, as Solzhenitsyn said. And right now we're at that point. Are they going to take our crumbs from us and see what the reaction is? I don't know. And methinks, because I, have watched this horrible system exploit people my entire life, I don't think they're going to yield. And I think that they'll probably cheat a third party candidate as well, in a way that is so overt and obvious that it'll actually cause some sort of like revolution. And that's the only way we're going to have a chance at taking a stab at the duopoly.
I mean, like,
I hope they prove me wrong.
Yeah, I hope so. But I mean, it's not looking super good. And like you were talking about climate change earlier, like this literal existential crisis for the ongoing life of the human species on this amazing planet that we have now, that's being absolutely ravaged and destroyed by the horrors of capitalism. And again, it's another crisis created by capitalism that impacts the most vulnerable and marginalized, people and groups among us. Like, neither party, or both parties, to say, are incapable of addressing that. Maybe they're just planning on, the elites being able to go, colonize Mars and go hang out with, Elon and his buddies up there. But it does, like, it's either of those options, like, get give us some crumbs, like allow us some progress through, a third party that would, either gain some power or force the Democrats left, or a full on revolution. And it seems like by their inaction to all these crises, whether it's climate change or, the pandemic or US imperialism, all these things, like it seems like it's going to be, the latter. And also, it needs to be pointed out, like, how many guns like people have like in the United States, like as well. And I definitely just think we need, to just kind of overthrow the whole system, burn it down. We need, a dictatorship of the proletariat as opposed to a dictatorship, of the capitalist class like we have now. We actually need, a government that looks out for the best interest of the working class, a centrally planned, economy designed to meet the needs of the masses, as opposed to the capitalist one that we have now that's only designed to maximize profit for a very, tiny capitalist class at the top, while everybody else gets crumbs, if that, right?
Yeah, and what you just talked about just now, that's part of the reason that as I've done Political Fight Club and it's gone on over the last year, that I've become more pro-gun. I've talked to a lot of righties in my personal life, and they've been able to convince me that, like, dude, we need to be able to defend ourselves. And the more that Joe Biden turns us into some sort of Orwellian surveillance militarized police state, the more I'm like, you know what? I kind of agree with my right wing brethren that I don't think we should be giving up our arms. And I did not believe that a year ago. But I try to listen to everybody on my show, and that's one of the things you're talking about there. The more inevitable this seems, the more I'm not for like disarming the people.
Yeah.
And especially since I see these fucking horrifying things that they have for like riot
Those
gear, and
robots
I
and
don't know if you've
shit.
seen that skit. Right, the robot dogs with the guns
Yeah.
on the back, but they also have like this skid steer that has this wall on the front that can be driven with a whole bunch of people dressed in riot gear behind it and can be lifted up. Like, this stuff scares the shit out of me. So in a way, I've been pushed more right on that issue. And I only got about 5 more minutes here, but that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I think Republicans can also enjoy what I have to say, because I don't see things in terms of red or blue anymore. There are a lot of things I actually agree with Republicans on, especially when it comes down to like government intervention that is overreach and censorship. That is stuff that a lot of righties agree with me on. And the more that it gets to that point, like this Orwellian state that Biden is trying to construct in front of our eyes, the more I'm like, dude, I think revolution is inevitable. It's just a matter of what's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. What's going to be the igniter? It was
Yeah.
George Floyd's murder on camera
Yeah.
for the Black Lives Matter protests. This is going to be kind of like, I think, V for Vendetta in a way, is like we're just waiting for somebody to do something stupid, and then there will be literal riots in the streets, a la like after MLK's assassination, and that got the Civil Rights Act done, right? 9 days later, but it took his assassination and a transnational riot to actually get that legislation done. And I fear that this is history repeating itself. And to your point, I don't think that the aristocrats quite understand the trouble that they're in. They're so in their own little bubble
Yeah.
where they really don't understand exactly the danger that they're in. And that is hilarious. Like, I've always joked on my show that they might just fuck off to Mars. Like, we'll have like Elon Musk build like a billionaire safe haven hotel up there for all of the billionaires. Plus, of course, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who aren't exactly billionaires, but they are the lapdogs dogs of billionaires. So they'll have their own special little pet room up in this, Mars haven for billionaires. So that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed, and it's going to be within yours and my lifetime, bud. Like, this isn't something that's decades in the future. I can feel it kind of boiling beneath the surface, and the elites are so disconnected that I don't think that they are going to give us anything. So I think it is inevitable in the end that we're going to have to force them to give us something.
Yeah. I just look at the material conditions. Homeless people on the street, people sleeping in tents, when we have 17 million houses that, those people could use. Like, the living wage, we don't have a living wage. Minimum wage was raised maybe like 10 years ago, and that obviously wasn't raised to a living amount then. Like, no health care during a pandemic, like people in these very precarious gig economy jobs that have no real benefits or ways to advance themselves. And then even these robot dogs at these police departments, that are some police departments in the US actually have more funding than some countries, like entire military budget. So it's like they're, gearing up for that. And I saw your video about, the Democrats, the squad voting to give the Capitol Police, more money to make sure they're, well protected, voting to, give themselves a raise, while we got to listen to the parliamentarian. We can't even get the, $15 an hour minimum wage.
Yeah, and the silver lining, guys, and everything I want you guys to remember is that this is in a way a good thing, because the night is darkest before the dawn, and it has to get really bad before we have a revolt that they will listen to.
Yeah.
So like that was always my thing with like if Trump were president right now, we'd probably have immense riots in the streets and therefore be one step closer to what we really want.
Mm-hmm.
He would be marginally a little bit worse than Biden. Now, Biden's doing a terrible job now, but he's also getting kind of the same thing done, I feel. He's pissing off enough people that maybe we'll get lucky. And so my last, like, kind of coming full circle on everything, guys, is that I don't want anybody to go back to work. I want you to do everything in your power to fuck with the system. This is Project Mayhem we're talking about here. We need to build some brotherhood amongst the pores and basically give a big FU to the bourgeoisie. And however you want to fuck with the system, go for it. Yeah. And the more we can do it and the more constant it can be, the more pressure we will exert on these people. And the more likely, as Chris Hedges puts it, we will be to get people that are not necessarily good people in Congress to do the good thing because they're afraid. So that's what we really need to do. And
make them afraid.
In a way, Joe Biden is doing such a bad job. And the aristocrats are so disconnected that we might just get lucky with a once-in-a-lifetime movement. And that's what I'm trying to perpetuate with Political Fight Club. That's what I really want Project Mayhem to be. I don't want us to have to resort to hurting these people. I want us to fuck with them in a way that it's annoying for them to exist unless they do the right thing.
Yeah.
But like I said, man, it's going to ramp up. If we can't protest our way out of this, you take everything from a population, they have no other option but to lash out. And that's where we are. So it's a matter of whether or not they're going to decide to help us. And I don't think they're going to. I think we're going to have to force them to help us. And so we'll just have to see how things turn out. But that's kind of my thing at Political Fight Club, man. I want to inspire as many people to get on YouTube and start bitching into a microphone as you do. And as plenty of other people that I just mentioned that have been banned do very well. Let's get together and create this like unaffiliated, also inspire activism and change in a real direct way. And that's what I do. You can check out my stuff. I also make fun of politicians a lot on my show. Like I do my roasts, which are some of them are so bad I can't even put them up on YouTube. They're on Rock. And right now, the thing about Political Fight Club that's cool is that if you get on and help us, it's like your therapy. Like it feels good to be part of something. A movement, to be helping out and meeting new people that believe what you believe. But also it just feels good to bitch about the government into a mic. It literally, my mental health has gotten better since I started just doing this on my iPhone at home.
Cathartic.
Yep, it really is. And I know you know what I'm talking about. It feels good, man.
Sure.
Like, so let's do this together, y'all. Like I know it seems insurmountable, but like in the movie Fight Club, man, we all have a lot of things in common. We don't have any money in the bank. The government's screwing us up. We can't have nice things because a few elites want to have yachts with yachts inside. Let's fuck with that system. Let's fuck that system up.
Yep. Yeah. And there is hope. I mean, like the labor unrest, that honestly gives me a lot of hope seeing that happening here and abroad. And that's why it's good to focus on some of those positive things. If you get too much, down in the weeds and the nitty gritty, it can seem like a little bit insurmountable, but there's a lot of good stuff happening too. So,
and we're all in this together. We're all in this. We can do it. We just need to stick together and realize how much power we have as the proletariat. Once we realize that, it's over for them.
Help each other out. Help your family. Help your community. Do mutual aid. Do what you can, because the system is not going to look out for us. So for sure.
100%, dude.
Awesome, man. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on again. I enjoyed it.
Dude, me too. Have me back whenever. I'm still out of work, and I don't think I'm going to even get this job that I had applied for. The hoops I'm having to jump through to reactivate my license in this state are out of control. So I don't even know if I'm going to get the job